In the grand tradition of Half-Life, Axiom Verge stars a scientist in trouble who embarks on a sci-fi quest that has absolutely nothing to do with the title of its game. Axiom Verge is a 2D side-scrolling Metroid 'em-up made by Thomas Happ, who spent 5 years putting it together as a side project during his career in AAA gaming. It's a clear Metroid homage, through and through. The beginning has you doing little more than shooting fixed-path crawlers with a slow little blaster, but after about 12 to 15 hours of inquisitive backtracking, you'll soon be grappling, teleporting, and flying all over the place with a liberating sense of movement, while exploding anything whose general direction you vaguely point your character at. It has a surprisingly large weapon wheel of different attacks that all get used surprisingly often, thanks to the versatility of their designs. The focus here is on projectile spread patterns, trading off power with spread coverage. Very, very generous coverage. You have a lot of different tools for weeding enemies out of different spots or firing at them without necessarily having to aim at them, which unfortunately means that much of the combat ends up being about cheesing the AI into walls they can't maneuver around, rather than skillfully dodging their attacks. You have a great weapon selection, and enough depth to where different weapons work best for different enemies, but the technical execution falls flat. That's just one promising setback that makes Axiom Verge one of the better, but not one of the best, Metroid clones out there. But as a good Metroid clone, it still has to do a few things right. Most importantly is the design of those hidden player abilities. The usual staple of upgrades, like the double jump and the wall jump and whatnot, only exist here with unusual twists attached to them. Like the Freeze Ray spin-off here is something called the Address Disruptor, which doesn't just freeze some enemies and turn them into walkable platforms, but also changes the AI and the mechanical rules of other enemies to make them drop health, turn friendly, change size, or create lines of solid walkable platform. Most of your upgrades feel like entirely new creations. My favorite is this remote drone you can use in place of a morph ball, complete with its own little damage cannon and health bar. You don't just remote control your way through puzzles designed for it, you can also use it to scout upcoming areas or take damage for you during trickier battles. All of the new abilities can be used both for puzzles and for combat, as you gradually chip away at more of the honeycomb level design, with emphasis on the gradual. I get that this kind of level design necessitates a lot of progress blocks, but Axiom Verge throws more dead ends at you than a suburban road map, which is fine for the first half, where I found my mental notes were still keeping me breaking into old places with new abilities efficiently, but during the second half, when the amount of uncovered map doubled, I got lost. A lot. I recommend jotting down notes for this game. It doesn't often intend for you to backtrack too very far, but my shameful incompetence at deciphering its clues had me running through the entire game multiple times looking for some round hole for whatever round peg I found hours earlier. Your mileage may vary, but I got stuck for about 3 hours. It was a compelling search. I did find quite a few health and power upgrades during the adventure, but languishing for hours because of a puzzle queue that just made me feel stupid once I finally discovered it was not a positive experience. I wasn't actually missing some obscure clue. It turns out I just hadn't wrapped my head around one of the game's most liberating movement abilities. Spoiler alert. I did expect to feel at least a little bit illiterate at some point in this game. After all, Super Metroid has that glass tube in Meridia that you have to power bomb through, and Axiom Verge has a 2-tile thick wall that eventually you can simply teleport through. That comparison to Metroid is inevitable, because the red bubbles, the lethal fruit loops, and pretty much everything about Axiom Verge is a commemoration to Metroid. It's seriously just one purple jellyfish away from bordering on IP infringement. It's a fan game in all but the name. And though a well-made fan game is always a treat for fans in question, they're not exactly known for high quality. Plus, pixelated Metroidvanias, even ones made by one person, aren't exactly a starving genre. Between the combat design, the drone, and the glitch disruptor, I can't say that Axiom's not innovative, but it's so clearly iterative. The whole time I was having flashbacks to Cave Story and La Mulana and thinking on what they did to elevate the genre that Axiom does not. It's clear that a lot of love and appreciation for Metroid games went into this thing, but sadly not a lot of original thought of its own seems to have made it through. This is probably the most Me Too homage game I've played since Lone Survivor. And I have the same problem here that I did there. It's a game so engrossed by how much it loves its predecessor that it can't manage to stylistically grow up and prove itself as a worthy successor of its own. While so many great indie Metroidvanias out there are going to be remembered in context of their own unique styles, Axiom Verge will forever be remembered by how it is or is not like Super Metroid. And Super Metroid was more than just a series of progressively complicated combat abilities hidden in a retroactively unlocked map. It was more than a backtracky time sink with catchy music. It's fine that it was those, and it's fine that that's what Axiom Verge is as well, but Super Metroid was also a pivotal moment in gaming history where developers figured out how to do moody atmosphere and wordless storytelling despite their heavy tech limits and the game's open-ended level design. In comparison to Samus and her cheesecake endings, the sideburns of Axiom Verge have as much personality as a wet rag. The story makes as much sense as my health insurance. I kept questioning whether or not this writing was supposed to be serious or comedy. The glitch punk pixel art style looks like a mess most of the time, which only serves to make the few nicely built areas a harsh stylistic contrast. At least the soundtrack made it out okay. There's some great music in there, for what that's worth. I said earlier that it was one of the better Metroidvanias, but it's far, far from being one of the best. It still evokes the timeless satisfaction of uncovering secrets that, for the most part, give you just enough clues to make you feel smart. It elicits a slow-burning power trip as you gradually come to memorize and master these levels, while your character grows into an overpowering and versatile little speedy tank. But when it comes to the matter of stringing all those feelings together into an efficient map, or contextualizing all that combat, exploration, and backtracking with its own likable style, this game remains only at the verge of greatness.